October 7th, 2023 marked the third biennial pilgrimage to the historic Wakamatsu tea and silk farm colony. 4 buses of pilgrims from the Bay Area and Sacramento converged on the site located in rural Placerville. Nichi Bei Foundation board member Wendy Yamashita kicked off our event with some remarks. Her opening remarks brought to light the reason we all attended the pilgrimage.
We come to Wakamatsu to remember the first settlement of Japanese immigrants in the United States. We remember their hopes and dreams that they had when they left for Japan and embarked on a journey to an unknown place. We remember their ingenuity as they planted mulberry trees for silkworm farming, tea plants, and bamboo roots for food and building. We remember the difficulties they faced with the dry climate and drought. And we must remember the growing intensity of anti-Asian sentiment that began to develop at this time that would later result in immigration restriction and exclusion. And we remember those who died here, like Okei-san, who was only 19 years old. We remember the Japanese immigrants who were here. And when we come together to remember, it is a political act of resistance.
The pilgrimage also featured John E. Van Zandt, associate professor at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, who's the author of Pacific Pioneers, Japanese Journeys to America and Hawaii, 1850 to 80, documenting the early Japanese pioneers' travels outside of Japan. He set the stage for the reason for Japanese pioneers to come to the great California frontier.
The destruction of Aizu Wakamatsu, resulting from this historic transformation from Tokugawa Japan to Meiji Japan, also ended up pushing a handful of these refugees to seek a new life in a place they may have heard of, but they certainly knew nothing about, and that is the California frontier.
Herb Tanimoto, docent with the American River Conservancy, gave a talk on the newly found descendants of Wakamatsu colonists Matsugoro Oto and Sakichi and Nami Yanagisawa, who've been discovered in Japan in recent years. These add to the descendants of Kuninosuke Mazumitsu, the only known Wakamatsu colony descendants in America. Masumizu's great-great-great-grandson, Aaron Gibson, attended at the tail end of the day's event. Before the pilgrims went to visit and pay respects to Oke, the first Japanese woman to be buried on American soil, they danced Bondadori, which was led by music from the Koyasan Kongo Gumi, with dancing led by Helene Nakamura of the Placer Buddhist Church. After paying respects to ancestors by dancing the Bonodori, docents of the American River Conservancy led the pilgrims in the hot sun to pay respects to Oke. Rinban Yuki Sugahara of the Buddhist Church of Sacramento, Butsuan, led a blessing, and each pilgrim took turns paying respects to Oke's grave. The original headstone of Oke's grave was returned to the site this year and is now protected by an enclosure from the elements. Before and after visits to Oke's grave, participants were able to consult genealogy experts from the California Genealogical Society. Professor Van Zandt puts in perspective the importance of the Wakamatsu colonists' brave endeavor here in California as a foundation for the future immigrants from Japan.
Before the Wakamatsu colonists, before Oke, there had been a handful of Japanese who came to the United States, but they came briefly. or were on official business. They didn't come here to stay. But the Wakamatsu colonists, they clearly came here intending to settle down and become part of this new world on the West Coast. And so Okay's grave is the first Japanese we know of who died in the United States. Represents that sort of vanguard of Japanese settlement, which within 15, 20 years would really start going, especially on the West Coast, and in many ways almost the same kind of format as here in Coloma, that is, in agriculture.
The Nichi Bei Foundation is grateful for the participants in this year's trek to Wakamatsu. The pilgrimage was presented by the Nichi Bei Foundation in partnership with the American River Conservancy and the California Genealogical Society. The event was sponsored by the UCLA Asian American Studies Center and the George and Sakae Aratani Care Award and the Wayne Maeda Educational Fund. This is Greg Valoria for the Nichi Bei Cafe.